Hi, I'm Sue and I'm going to talk you through the second video of a series of 2 to help you create your Lydia wrap skirt. This one concentrates on attaching the facing and finishing the edges of the skirt and should take approximately 2 hours. Each slide will progress to the next after narration, so pause whenever you need to, fast forward and rewind to make sure that you get things just right. Just a quick reminder that seam allowances are 1.5 centimetres unless otherwise advised. Do zigzag any edges where suggested. Labels could be attached when the garment is finished if you're going to garment dye, so that you can dye first and your label print doesn't disappear. And only use the sewing thread supplied, because if you use polyester it will not dye to match your garment if you choose to garment dye, and it's not biodegradable. Now you've already assembled the front and back skirt panels and made the waist tie, so we're now going to use the front facing, which has one notch at the top, the back facing, which has a double notch at the top centre, the labels and the waist tape, and of course your thread. We'll start with the 2 facing pieces, so set your machine to a wide zigzag, ready to neaten the edges. You're going to neaten the 2 sides of the facings and along the large lower curved edge. Identify the front and the back facings by highlighting the notches. So the piece with the single notch is the front and the double notch at the centre is the back. Once you've neatened the edges, place the front facing on top of the back facing, pin on the right hand side on the 2 short edges and sew a 1.5 centimetre seam which will form the centre back seam. Press this open with a medium or 2-dot iron, and a steam iron is the best. Now the 2 remaining edges of the facings need pressing in onto the wrong side, just 5mm, and then stitching down as you can see in the second image. If you're not going to garment dye your product, or you're planning on dyeing a pale shade, then you could attach your designer label at this point to the centre of the back facing, just a couple of centimetres up from the bottom of the facing. Trim off all loose threads and you're ready to attach the facing to the skirt. So with the skirt facing up and looking at the right side, with the skirt extension pointing to the right, pin the right 3 darts into place to hold them flat, and then zigzag all the way from the first large dart all the way along to the tip of the skirt extension. You zigzagged the entire sides and edge of the skirt pieces previously, so now press these in 5mm firmly with a medium heat steam iron, as is shown in the second image, and then stitch down just the top right section 10 centimetres down to hold it into place. Now it's time to carefully pin the facing onto the skirt. So you need to do this right sides together. So put the skirt onto the table with the right side facing you and the facing down onto the skirt so that you're looking at the inside of the facing. Line the double notch of the facing up with the centre back seam of the skirt. The right edge of the facing should end at the large dart, and the left edge of the facing should end or just slightly overlap the left edge of the skirt. The tape supplied will need cutting into 2 equal parts at this point. Use lots of pins to hold the edges together, as can be seen in the 4th image. Now don't worry if your facing slightly overlaps the edge of the skirt. You can see in my first image that my facing does this. It can happen if you just get your darts 1mm out along the top. If each dart is 1 or 0.5 millimetre out, it all accumulates to make maybe 0.5 centimetre where the facing may be a little bit too big. But it doesn't matter, it's going to get turned in, you'll never see it. Or maybe you've done yours perfectly and your facing will line up perfectly, but my image shows you what to do if yours is slightly out. We're going to be sewing a 1 centimetre seam down that side, so you need to mark 1 centimetre away from the edge of the skirt rather than the edge of the facing. Now tuck one of your tapes in between the facing and the skirt 2 centimeters down from the top edge. The tape will be facing into the center of the skirt, and it's a good idea to pin it away out of the way of the skirt edge because you don't want to get it trapped in the seam as you sew the top of the waist edge. Stitch up the side of the facing just 1 centimeter from the edge of the skirt, reinforce the corner and then stitch across the top of the skirt edge 1.5 centimeters all the way along. Back stitch in the start and the finish. Trim off the corner and snip down towards the sewing line using your fabric shears, taking care not to cut through your sewing line. Now on to neatening the tip of the skirt extension piece. Turn in and press 2 centimeters at the tip and make sure that you have repressed both sides of the tip, as you can see in the second image. Press down the zigzagged edge of the top curve of the skirt all the way from the tip to the large dart. Now you can turn the facing the right way out, and the facing will need to be pressed so that the seam is perfectly along the edge, top edge of the facing and the skirt. So it's a good idea to, on the inside, press the seam towards the facing first before you completely turn the facing to the right side, and then press on the outside with the iron on both sides, on the inside facing and on the skirt front. Your waist tape will now be positioned at the top corner, as you can see in the first image. Now all the way around the skirt edge you're going to turn in again 5 millimeters, so you've now got a tiny double hem, and pin it into place. On the skirt extension side, do this from the edge of the facing all the way to the tip, and the same on the other side, from the facing all the way down and around the bottom of the skirt and up to the tip. Then this needs stitching into place, but on both sides you need to stitch towards the tip, or the tip of the skirt extension, the tiny little point, can get tangled up in the sewing mechanism, just as I explained on the waist tie, the previous video. So on the wrong side and starting at the corner where the waist tape is attached, stitch on top of the facing all the way down and around until you reach the tip, and then the same from the edge of the facing along the top waist edge of the skirt. Stitch this small double 5 millimeter hem down all the way along until you get to the tip. Slow down at the tip so that you don't jam the fabric in the machine or break your needle, because you're going to be stitching through quite a few layers of fabric there. Now, if you're not dyeing your garment, now's the time to attach your care label, and I find the most sensible place is to put it underneath your designer label. So trim it to shape and zigzag or overlock the edges, and then pin it below the designer label onto the facing. Stitch with a straight stitch to attach it to the facing, but not through the skirt. Now pin your facing onto the skirt all the way around the bottom edge of the facing, putting a pin through each dart. The facing is best secured to the skirt by using stitch in the ditch, as I call it, which is an invisible method of sewing through the crease of each dart or each seam. Before you start stitching in the ditch, take your second piece of tape and tuck under the edge and attach it to the second dart from the left side of the facing. So you will see in the second picture you've got the large dart where the facing ends, and then the next small dart in is where you're going to attach this piece of tape. Pin it into place and it will get attached as you stitch in the ditch. Now put your skirt under the presser foot right sides up with a hand each side of the dart that you're going to stitch down. Pull the dart open so that you can stitch straight down the centre of the crease formed by the dart stitches. So back stitch at the top, Stitch all the way down until you reach the area of the bottom of the facing and a little bit more back stitching, then repeat on every dart. Make sure you keep the waist tie out of the way. Finally, on the dart that includes the waist tie, on the right side, top stitch 5mm from the left of the seam, and you'll form a twin needle effect because you've already stitched this close to the edge during the first set of instructions. And that's it, your Lydia skirt is complete, but I'm going to just run through the tying instructions because I've seen a few people get a little confused when they try to tie it for the first time. Place the designer label on the small of your back and then pull around the piece that has the waist tie attached at the corner to the front and to the right. So then you tie the two waist tapes at the right side of your waist. Then use your left hand to bring the linen waist tie around the back of your skirt to your left side, and the skirt extension you'll have in your right hand. Bring this to your left side, your left hip. Tie the two together over your hip at the front. Now it's either time to wash and dry and iron your Lydia skirt, or possibly you're going to tie-dye or garment dye your skirt. If you'd like to purchase one of our tie-dye or garment dye kits, please do so from our Etsy store and follow our YouTube instructions how to achieve professional results. Thank you for purchasing your Cut Couture kit, and I hope you get many years of enjoyment from wearing your creation. I'd love to see your results, so please do tag us at Cut Couture Kit, #SoNaturallyStylish.